Welcome, everyone. My name is Ed Cameron, and I'm going to be your MC today. I'm a member of the Newburyport Democratic City Committee and also a city councilor here. So welcome to our 10th annual 3 Towns, 2 Cities breakfast. And when we say 3 towns, we mean the towns of West Newbury, Salisbury, and Newbury, and the 2 cities of Amesbury and Newburyport. Here to welcome us this morning is Newburyport's mayor and also a very strong Democrat, Donna Holliday.
Good morning. It is always a pleasure to welcome you to the great city of Newburyport. I do apologize that it's not as warm as we would like it to be because it is May, but there is good news on the front. I heard that there will be a 7 in front of the temperature coming up this week, and maybe heat will shut off in our communities. I know it's been a rough winter for all of us, but we got hit pretty hard here in Newburyport and in Plum Island. But we have great legislators who work closely with us, and that's what it's all about when we hit crisis situations like this. So I'm really, really proud of the support that we received from the state and from the broader regional community. So thank you all for coming. Keep up the good work, and have a great breakfast and enjoy our beautiful city.
Thank you, Mayor Holliday. We have a great speaking list here for you this morning. We're going to start with somebody who's not a stranger at all to our region. I believe he's probably been here to at least 8 of the 10 breakfasts, I'd say, and that is Secretary of the Commonwealth, Bill Galvin. So please give a warm round of applause for Secretary Galvin.
Thank you, Ed. Who's counting? But I think I have been here, if not 8 to 10, but it's a great event, and I have to tell you, I look forward to coming here because it's such a great opportunity to meet with all of you. And I want to start by, first of all, thanking you for your support. I was up for re-election last year and carried all but 2 towns. We're going to try to reassign them to Connecticut next time, and but I'm very grateful for your continuing support. I'm also, as much as I'm talking about the last election, one of the reasons I wanted to come here today was to talk about the next election. And when our new governor put the budget in, or his proposal for the budget in earlier this year, he defunded or very drastically underfunded my elections division to the point that when I appeared before the Joint Committee on Ways and Means to discuss the budget, I said to them, well, I know we're going to elect a new president next year, but apparently the governor only wants 49 states to vote, not 50, because we would not have had enough money for a presidential primary given the funding that he provided. One of the facets of the presidential primary, of course, is the election of ward and town committees and the state committee. And that process begins this year. It begins first with the release of nomination papers for both the ward and town committees and the state committee, which will be in August of this year. Now, there's one other piece of this that's important, and that is town committees and city committees can adjust the size, the legal size of their committees. Most committees will choose to stay the same, and if you do nothing, you will stay the same. But there are some places that want to expand. Unfortunately, some communities misunderstand the instructions, and some inadvertently last time reduced their size unintentionally, which created a problem. We'll be sending you out a mailing on that very soon and try to consider whether you want to make any changes. The presidential primary, like I said, is important, and I think sitting up here in Essex County, you have a front row seat to the goings-on in New Hampshire. And I guess as Democrats, we have to be encouraged when we see not just the number of Republican candidates, but how truly strange they are. It's a source of encouragement, for at least for me. One of the reasons I like to come out to these events so often is that you folks are true community people. And the interests you share and we share as a party are indeed national interests, whether they're health care, the right to protect people in terms of financial investments, which is something I'm very concerned about, All of the issues that we have fought for as Democrats for so long, these are the issues that are at stake. And one thing that's becoming very clear about 2016, and we've seen this in the national elections for Congress, is the role of money and the concern that the turnout and the effect may be affected by money. Well, we have to deal with that, but we also have to deal with it in terms of the work we do. One of the things we also know is the more people that vote, the better off we are. And I think that's extremely important. To that end, I want to mention a few things that we're working on, that we will be working on. We will have available beginning this year, most likely in June, the ability to register to vote online. Next year, the pre-registration of 16 and 17-year-olds, which is important. All of this will culminate in 2016 with so-called early voting here in Massachusetts. All of these things will help us, I think, generate more and more people to vote. But there's this kind of idea out there that this bonhomie, good guy, Charlie Baker, well, you know, he might be a good guy, certainly not a bad guy, not evil, but there's some very significant differences between him and us. And one of those issues that I think I'd like to mention to you today is the issue of regulations. Now, Republicans, when they hear regulations, it's, you know, some sort of bad thing. Well, I happen to think in some respects regulations are a good thing. And I think in Massachusetts we should be proud of some of the regulations we have. Well, the governor, in some sort of misguided Chamber of Commerce mentality, maybe he's been visiting New Hampshire or something, he's put up an executive order that says that as of March 31st next year, all regulations have to be sunsetted unless they are specifically authorized. And he's further put into this executive order that no state regulation can exceed the protections of a federal regulation. Well, that's dead wrong. You know, when you drive up here, as I just did this morning, and you see the open space, and you see the environmental issues that you people deal with, and the sensitivity we deal with it, putting those at risk because some Chamber of Commerce has decided that regulations are bad is bad. And in the financial services sector, I'm proud of the fact that Massachusetts has the regulations it has that I enforce to help people with their investments, to help people be protected from bad people who might steal their money and take away their retirement savings. I'm proud of those things. So I think we as Democrats have to stand up and say, he might be a good guy, but he's wrong. And we have to make sure that we fight for the things that we care about. Obviously, we lost an election last year, and we've moved on. But we have not left behind the things that we care about. What we share, and which is our strength, is that we truly represent the people of Massachusetts, whether it's about education, health care, whatever those issues might be, civil rights. We have been in the forefront. You have been in the forefront. And it's in that strength, it's in that connection to our people that we make the progress we make. We have a lot of work ahead of us in 2016. We have to make sure that those objectives are protected and advanced. But I'm confident that if we work together, we will be successful. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Can we give the Secretary a round of applause? That was great. Thank you for helping us get this kicked off. And next, I'd like to introduce Mike Murray. Mike is the field director. He wears many hats, but the field director for the Massachusetts State Democratic Party. And please welcome Mike.
Hi, thank you so much, and thanks for having me here in Newburyport today. I just want to come here and briefly give you an update of what we have going on at the Democratic Party. First of all, today, May 2nd, marks the official beginning of the 2015 caucus season, and Democrats are caucusing across the Commonwealth. It's an exciting time, and I hope you all will attend your local caucuses and run for delegate. Another thing that we've been working on is the 1965 Project. If you're not familiar with it, the 1965 Project is something we launched on Martin Luther King Day, and it's our goal to register 1,965 new voters across the Commonwealth by August 6th, which is the 50th anniversary of the signing of the Voting Rights Act. And while the Supreme Court has undercut key provisions of this landmark legislation, and while other states pass restrictive voter ID laws, here in Massachusetts we want to register new voters to honor the legacy of Dr. King and to speak to our party values, which I know you all share, of participation and inclusion. So I hope you'll join us in this mission because, quite frankly, we need your help. So I won't take up too much of your time, but anyways, thanks so much for having me here. It is my first 3 T's, 2 C's breakfast. I hope it's not my last, and thanks again.
Thank you, Mike. Before I introduce our next speaker, who is going to be Eileen Duff, I want to recognize some of the elected officials and party committee members that are out there, and if they could just stand. We like to stand so people can see you. So I want to recognize some of the elected officials in the audience from the Newburyport City Council. Councilor Jared Eigerman from Ward 2. Newburyport City Councilor Charlie Tontar, who's out in the hallway. Newburyport City Councilor at Large Barry. From West Newbury Board of Selectmen Joe Anderson. From Newburyport City Councilor at Large and Coffee Roaster Extraordinaire Bruce Vogel. Newburyport City Councilor at Large Ed Cameron, that's me. From Amesbury, Councilor Jonathan Sherwood. Newburyport School Committee Steve Cole. Amesbury Councilor Bob Lavoie. She doesn't have to stand up, but Amesbury Councilor Ann Ferguson. She's using the old knee surgery excuse for not standing up. And we're glad you're doing well and good to see you moving around. And from the Amesbury School Committee, Deb LaValle. So now we're going to hear from, I'm sure, what will be one of our most exciting speakers of the morning, because there's no way she could top, I think it was last year, where she led us in a sing-along. So I'm throwing down the gauntlet. This is Eileen Duff, our representative on the Governor's Council.
Thank you very much. I left my stool in the car, but there's a low podium this year. First of all, thank you for your support of me in the last election. And thank you to all of you and to all of the local officials here. The Democratic Party, this is who we are. This is the guts of the party. This is how we win elections, is by local city and town committees. And let us not forget that Charlie Baker won by the skin of his teeth. This was not a mandate, and we must not forget that. The thing that really burned me up about that, though, was the MBTA and how the T is getting slammed left and right, mismanaging their money in their budget. No one wants to talk about the fact that Charlie Baker mismanaged the Big Dig to the tune of $19 billion, to the fact that the federal government, it was so egregious and so mismanaged that the federal government stopped giving the state any relief. So what did they do? They took $9 billion of that and put it right on the MBTA. Not one toll increase, not one fare increase since the Big Dig has gone to the T. It has gone to dig out the Big Dig. The other thing as a governor's council that deeply concerns me is not only the cuts that are coming into the court system, but the fact that we have an administration that stands up and talks about the opiate problem. And yet, they've just cut $400,000 of public safety money from the parole board. 20 beds that were just funded. And I think that is what makes us different as Democrats, is that we care more about the human services. And it doesn't mean we're perfect, and it doesn't mean we haven't made mistakes. But we do need to stand strong, and we have to understand that this was not a mandate. This was a very, very slim victory, and it's 4 years, and we're just in the first 5 months of it. This governor will have more judicial appointments than the last governor. He will be able to shape the court for years and years to come. And although the lieutenant governor seems to have undergone an epiphany recently about gay rights, she did, on more than one occasion, introduce legislation to take gay marriage away from the state of Massachusetts. We can't say we have equality and justice for all unless we really offer equality and justice for all, and that means keeping community courts open. It means funding recovery programs. It means funding public schools and not letting charter schools take over our system. And it also means supporting our union workers who represent the middle class. Because in 1978, only 12% of American workers were non-union. Today, in 2015, 12% of Americans are union.
Thank you, Eileen. Our next speaker is representing the Register of Deeds for Essex County. John O'Brien's not able to be with us today, but Debbie Gilmore is here to speak on his behalf. So please welcome Debbie.
So I am Debbie Gilmore. I am John O'Brien's assistant. John couldn't be here today, but he wanted me to remind you all, it was 2 years ago when he was here, he talked to you about the influx of fraudulent documents that were being recorded in our Registry of Deeds, in your Registry of Deeds. And he wants me to tell you he's still fighting the fight. He's still not accepting any documents that have known robo-signers on them. Okay. So he's trying to secure funding to get a full forensic audit done at the registry to look at all the records, see if any others have been infected. Because believe it or not, your registry is one of the most valuable in the nation in that it has the oldest land records in the nation. What's there is a national treasure. There are Indian deeds, deeds signed from King George, and the records go back to 1640. I'm not going to take up any more time. I hope you can enjoy this beautiful Saturday. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Debbie. Next, it's my pleasure to introduce Rick Jacobs. Rick is the District Director for Congressman Seth Moulton. The Congressman's unable to be with us this morning, but Rick, thank you for being here.
Ed, thank you. And thank you to all of you for having me here. I appreciate the invitation. The Congressman sends his regret how I am come to stand before you and why I am so deeply supportive of Congressman Seth Moulton is I believe, and I hope you share with me, that one of the biggest challenges we face as a country is the incredible partisan gridlock in Congress. And thank you. And something needs to be done about it. And when I got to know Congressman Moulton prior to him running for office, I felt that that was someone who not only had the vision, but absolutely positively had the substance to break that chain in Congress and to find ways that we can get back to a day when we had statesmen running our country, people who put love of country and duty and service ahead of partisanship. And the key is, how do you do that while staying true to the key core democratic values, and that's incredibly important. You know, one example is just recently was the medical device tax. This is an industry incredibly important to the 6th District, and the Congressman has come out and asked for a repeal of the medical device tax to help grow and sustain this important job-creating industry in Massachusetts. And so there will be opportunities when the Congressman might not necessarily be in lockstep with the party line, but I can promise you that he absolutely will listen to both sides and will do what he feels is both best for the district, for the country, for our constituents. So as I said, you know, thank you. As I said, this is a new office. We're 120 days in, and we're obviously coming into the shadow of a much beloved 19-year incumbent. And so we have a lot to learn, and I think that's the first thing the Congressman will admit, and it's the first thing that I will admit. So please, we have an open door. If there are any issues of importance that you feel we need to know or be better educated on, please call me. Please let us know, and we look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Before our next speaker, we're going to have the Salisbury Democratic Committee come up and make their scholarship award. I'm going to hand this over to the esteemed chair of the Salisbury Democrats, Lou Masiello.
Good morning. This is, I think, the fourth or fifth year we've awarded a scholarship. And again, we have a superstar. I do want to thank you all just for coming to this breakfast, because that's where we get the funds to do this. And education is very important to our committee, and we know it's very important to the Democratic Party. So we're so happy that we can do this every year. Again, I thank you for that, and I'm going to introduce now the chair of our scholarship committee, John Hosianitis, who he does the searching and the screening, and they always pick a good one. So, John, here you are.
Thank you, Lou. For the sixth year, the Salisbury Democratic Town Committee is pleased to award its Leadership Scholarship to a deserving graduate of the graduating class of Triton High School. I'd like to thank the Scholarship Committee of Diane Masiello, Mary Whitmore, and Mike Gilbert for bringing forward today another outstanding Salisbury resident. Jessica Macy, daughter of Gail and Brian Macy, is ranked 13 in a class of 175. She has participated in the robotics team, rock climbing club, forensics group, yearbook, Model UN, staff writer of the Triton Voice, won Biotech Achievement Award, Basic Programming Achievement Award, and has exceeded in 5 AP classes. She wrote in her essay, quote, "Leadership is not about control, but about cooperation. It requires an understanding that not everyone can speak, but everyone must be heard. Ultimately, leadership is about listening. It is a group effort disguised as a one-person job," unquote. Jessica will attend Clark University in the Seven Hills of Worcester in the fall and pursue a degree in economics and international relations. Please join me in congratulating this year's Salisbury Democratic Town Committee Leadership Scholarship winner of a $500 scholarship, Miss Jessica Macy.
I'd like to say a great big thank you to the committee for awarding this scholarship to me. It'll be extremely helpful as I pursue my higher education starting this fall. I'd love to thank you so very much for your generosity.
The state senator for three of our 5 communities. Senator Kathleen O'Connor Ives represents the 1st Essex Senate District, and down here what that means is Salisbury, Newburyport, and Amesbury. She was recently overwhelmingly re-elected for her 2nd term as our state senator, and she's a former Newburyport City Councilor. I got the pleasure of sitting next to her for 5 years, and we have some great counselors in attendance, but Katie, you were one of the best, and I really wish you could hold both jobs at the same time. So without any further ado, please give a warm welcome to Senator Kathleen O'Connor Ives.
Thank you, Ed. We had great times sitting together on the Newburyport City Council. And forgive me, it's sad that I ran here 5 minutes ago and I'm still out of breath, but I'm also out of shape. So it is an amazing tradition we have here at the 3 T's, 2 C's. I know that officially the communities I represent are Newburyport, Amesbury, and Salisbury, but honestly, the Newburys are a member of the family too, and you should be proud not only of the strong attendance on a non-election year, but the fact that you have to come out and be active on a beautiful Saturday morning to continue that momentum, whether there are candidates running for office or not. So this brings me to a very, very valuable opportunity to sincerely say thank you to everyone who supported me during a very tumultuous election. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So because of your help, we literally still have a seat at the table in the state Senate, making decisions every single day that impact all of the residents of the 1st Essex District. And yes, I'm busy on all 3 fronts of my area of work, which includes constituent services on an hourly basis, helping residents navigate state systems in the areas of the RMV, healthcare, access to benefits, you name it. Yes, I have the honor of chairing a very important legislature committee. It's a long name, but it's very relevant. It's the Joint Committee on Community Development and Small Businesses, super relevant to the cities and towns in our district. I also filed about 30 bills, ranging in many different policy areas, from improving funding mechanisms for special education, reducing toxins in our environment, and hopefully banning the practice of fracking for natural gas in the state of Massachusetts. And next week, the Senate will be taking up the state budget, and I'll be working to ensure that we have the funding we need to continue our efforts to respond to the public health crisis of substance abuse, keeping our community colleges affordable, responsibly funding the court systems, the Department of Children and Families, and many other critical state needs. I want to speak to you today about something more general, and yet this is at the very heart of the true potential for positive change to take place via our elected officials, and that is the need for and the importance of honesty and courage in elected office in order to make progress against so many economic and social challenges. That question and concern brings us squarely before the issue of our electoral process and the problematic state of our election system. I'm in the business of problem solving in the public's interest, and I chose to serve in that capacity. However, community engagement and public service should not be a spectator sport where people try to influence outcomes through the power of money or spark political sabotage through social media and armchair activism. We've seen opportunities squandered in the 80s and in the 90s, where America's free trade policies promoted and expanded free trade without labor, safety, or environmental standards. U.S. corporations became nationless entities with economies larger than many nations. The future for a strong middle class was outsourced, and we lost ground on the issue of campaign finance reform. With war ongoing for over a decade, subject to now media fatigue, federal dollars to our state and all of the states have dried up, and cities and towns now scramble to maintain quality public education, which becomes less and less public as it costs money to play sports, to play an instrument, or go to kindergarten. We want to attain a quality life and environment where everyone feels safe and has access to opportunity. But I feel sincerely like we're running out of time. We don't have time anymore to stay the course, stick our heads in the sand, or to repeat the mistakes of the past. We need a community, a state, and a country that's honest about the challenges we face and has the courage to tackle the challenges we face. I just got reelected, and I have one whole year before I'm up for election again. I do my work as a proud Democrat, representing a purple district stretching from North Andover and Methuen all the way to Salisbury. I aim to live the values my parents instilled in me. I was born a Democrat, and I'll die a Democrat. But in this last campaign, my own Democratic bona fides were questioned, and I know that if it could happen to me, it could happen to any one of my Democratic colleagues. But never discount the strength that I gain and others gain from knowing we do the work of regular people every single day. I thank you for this opportunity to speak to you today. I'm always available to you either at the district or in the state Senate. And I just feel like whether it's the efforts of the civil rights movement, environmentalism, women's rights, any positive change that happened when we felt like our country was stagnating, it happened because people on the ground had the courage and the insight to move forward. Thank you.
Next, we're going to hear from the Newburyport Democratic City Committee to announce their scholarship award winner, and I'm going to introduce Keena Harris.
Hello. Today, I am proud to introduce the winner of the 2015 George Cashman Leadership Scholarship. We asked students to identify an issue in contemporary American society that is of concern to them and how they would resolve this issue. There were a lot of strong applicants this year, but we were most impressed by one student's choice of topic, equal pay for equal work. We also asked students how they have shown initiative to lead and inspire others in the spirit of the late George Cashman, which she has done to create a safe place for students and prevent them from feeling alienated. She created a gay-straight alliance at Newburyport High School, which they were lacking. So this year's award goes to Gwenna Emerson. We wish her the best of luck as she prepares to attend Mount Holyoke College in the fall.
I just want to say thank you to the scholarship committee for giving me this opportunity and being this generous. I know that you didn't have an easy decision, so I thank you for having the faith in me. And I also thank you for, I just turned 18 in January, and I thank you for representing the democratic issues that I care about when I couldn't. So now that I can vote, I'm happy that I can help push more towards what I believe in, but thank you so much for representing Democrats.
Our next speaker, I think he's a member of the 10 Club. We had our first breakfast in 2006, and our event that year was the first time that all three Democratic gubernatorial candidates were here. Deval Patrick had been working the grassroots for many months. Tom Riley had been Attorney General and was looking to step up. And Chris Gabrielli got in the race a couple of days earlier. And our breakfast was the first time all three of them were in the same room together. And that's where many of us first met John Walsh. And John is somebody that we've known for all 10 years, and he's our next speaker. Please welcome John Walsh.
Thank you, Ed. It's wonderful to be back here. I want to also tell you I had a conversation with my successor, Senator Tom McGee, and the reason he's not here today is he's off at some wonderful place meeting with Washington, D.C. Democrats. So I told him I'd represent him a little bit, and I also told him that is not the part of the job I miss, so I'm glad he's there and I'm not. And on a beautiful spring day like today, it's hard not to be enthusiastic and optimistic. You know, the snow is gone finally. There actually is, I moved to Dorchester about a year ago, and there is a Dunkin' Donuts where there's one small pile that is still there. I'm suggesting that the scientists from MIT come and study this resilient matter. We should be putting it on the space shuttle. But in that sense of optimism, you know, I woke up this morning, and if you have not had a chance yet to read Tom Farragher's column in the Boston Globe, which features our own Jim Roosevelt, you should take some time today to do it. In that column, Jim states something that made my heart pound a little stronger. We said, we need to stand up for who we are and what we believe in. And that is the legacy of Jim Roosevelt's family, which he has maintained and advanced with his own career. And I listened, I'm so glad I got in time to hear Bill Galvin, because whenever I hear Bill speak, I learn something. And I want to add a little detail to one of the things he said about regulatory reform. Because I think that sometimes, about second or third grade, if I remember, there may be teachers here that would do this. At second or third grade, we start to teach children to recognize patterns. So when Charlie Baker says, I want to reduce regulatory reform, you would think that that makes sense because somehow we've had 8 years of crazy, liberal, ridiculous, anti-business, democratic leadership. Well, in fact, in 2014, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts reviewed every single one of the 1,791 regulations, and as a matter of fact, 256 of them were reformed or eliminated. Because you know, in 2010, Charlie Baker's proposal was to cut 5,000 jobs from state government. In 2014, he said he's not. But what are we doing today but cutting 5,000 jobs from state government? Patterns. Republican Charlie Baker says some really nice things during the campaign, but are we going to keep tabs on what his proposals he's putting forward? You know that the governor's proposal proposes sort of generic friendly cuts to health care through management. Let's watch those carefully. You know that access to health care, we're #1 in the nation, and we're aggressively progressive in the spirit of Jim Roosevelt's grandfather at making health care a right for everyone in this Commonwealth. Let's make sure that these generally don't worry about it, we're smart, pixie dust management solutions actually are not efforts to take coverage away from people who need it. You know that if you read the paper, right, the governor says we have this terrible billion-dollar deficit. The fact we've had a couple supplemental budgets and released money for local road projects in this terrible thing, it's interesting. I, for one, on July 1st, am going to watch and calculate carefully at the end of the fiscal year what actually was our balance sheet. Because I worry that if your agenda is to create a pool of money for future tax cuts, then promoting a larger fiscal problem than exists might be one way to do it. To put a big, fat, ugly deficit number out there and cut 5,000 state employees and reduce programs for social justice. That would be one way, and miraculously, in a year or two, we'll have a massive tax cuts as these things are. Watch for patterns. We still haven't found the fishermen. And the big dig was not on time and under budget. Most of you are a student of history, so I want to go back to, so you got the poll numbers right. The governor looks like he's popular as hell, right? I get it. I get it. When you say you can have something and not pay for it, who's not in favor of something for free? But I don't want you to be discouraged by that as we look to 2018, and most of you were probably too young to remember 1991. But you might remember, if you want to Google it, you can confirm that I'm not making this up. In February of 1991, President George H.W. Bush enjoyed poll ratings of 89%. February of 91. In July of 1992, George H.W. Bush's poll ratings were 29%. Stuff happens when Democrats stand up for who we are and what we believe in. We are in a long-term mission. Our Commonwealth is back in the leadership business on issues like education and healthcare and environment and veteran services and clean energy, and we intend to stay there. And we're going to do it every year from here. I'm so excited to be a member of the 10-year club. This is a great place to be, and I get to go to the Red Sox game this afternoon while Tom McGee's off dealing with a bunch of people from D.C.
So this says, outstanding leadership. In honor of outstanding leadership and committed service to the Massachusetts Democratic Party, the 3T and 2C Committee gladly presents John E. Walsh with this Award of Excellence. Thank you.
I want to introduce somebody who is at least a two-time member of our 3T2C club. And you don't often hear the words Harvard in underdog and professional basketball player in underdog. But last year at this time, Maura Healey was speaking to the 3T2C breakfast for the first time. And I remember Maura, who had visited Newburyport in this area many times and is no stranger by birth to this area. She's a local. Was over on the sidelines getting ready to speak and looking a little nervous and a little combative. And this year, you've come a long way, baby. You are fresh off visiting the Supreme Court down in D.C., fighting opiate abuse here in Massachusetts, fighting for equal rights down in D.C., fighting for health care and access to health care, and doing a lot of tremendous things. And we are so happy that you are our Attorney General. So please welcome Maura Healey.
Good morning. Thank you. As I said, I'm 100 days in, and I have just to tell you, I love my job. I love my job, and I am grateful to the voters and the people of Massachusetts for giving me the opportunity to serve. We did some things right away when we got in. I promised folks that we'd be ready to roll on day one. So we made some immediate changes in terms of the structure of the office. I created for the first time a Healthcare and Fair Competition Bureau. I also created for the first time an Energy and Environment Bureau. I know and you know how important it is that we act in ways that both protect ratepayers and families and businesses who've been shocked with escalating electricity bills this year in particular, but also that we do everything we can to combat and mitigate the adverse effects of climate change and to end that. And so I promise to you, you will have the most progressive, the most innovative, the most forward-thinking Attorney General's office and government agency, not just in Massachusetts, but in this country, when we think about environmental policy and when we think about energy policy. And we already... We got started on that. We're already active in litigations defending the EPA's ability to regulate down in the District of Columbia. We met recently with Senator Markey and we're teaming up with his team on some federal legislation on that front. We are fighting hard in regulatory proceedings in the Department of Public Utilities to advocate for renewables, advocate for harnessing hydro, solar, wind, and other alternative energy sources. We also are looking to be very active when it comes to matters related to the NRC. And I know firsthand, having grown up 5 miles in the shadow of the Seabrook Station, how important that is. We've got active litigation going on right now with respect to Pilgrim. Real safety issues and concerns there with respect to the storage of spent fuel. And we've taken on the NRC and will continue to fight the NRC to stand up for the public safety and the health and well-being of residents in that area. Look, when I ran, I said that I was going to be an attorney general who was going to be there to fight for consumers, to stand up for the little guy in the face of some really dominant powers. And so we've taken steps right away. We've brought litigation and actions against for-profit schools and colleges. I was just last week with Senator Elizabeth Warren on this. You know that out there today, and this is a billion-dollar industry, where people, just as they did in the subprime lending market, are raking it in on the backs of vulnerable students. So what we need is relief from our federal government, and the U.S. Department of Education has the ability to wipe clean these debts and give these students a clean start. And they need it. These are your single moms. These are your returning service members. These are your veterans who've spent and blown GI Bill money, given it over to this for-profit school, only to see it go line investors' pockets. So we're going to be strong on that, and we're going to lead the country when it comes to taking on and taking down predatory for-profit schools. That's what you need in an Attorney General's office. The first set of regulations that I came out with was a regulation also to protect consumers, vulnerable consumers, young people. It's a ban on the sale of e-cigarettes. I was frankly surprised that this didn't exist before. When it comes to standing up for vulnerable citizens and residents in our state, I have a real concern and focus on human trafficking. There are so many people living and working in the shadows and are being taken advantage of. And I am bringing this issue to light, and we're talking a lot about the issue of human trafficking, both with respect to labor and what's happening in some of the workplaces, but also with respect to the sex trade. And when I talk about workers in the underground economy, there's a set of workers out there, domestic workers, a lot of people who are working in homes across this Commonwealth who simply haven't had the needed rights and protections. We got complaints in our office, and I'm glad to say that we now have a domestic workers' Bill of Rights law that this Attorney General's office is going to enforce. We are also in the midst of implementation of earned sick time law. Many of you know, many of you supported, many of you worked hard to see this law passed last year. And I am proud that Massachusetts has an earned sick time law in place on the effective date, July 1. We've heard calls from some in the business community that this should be delayed. And we know that there's no time and there's no room for delay on that. So I have said, as Attorney General, that we are going to be ready to go on July 1st. We need this law in place. We need these protections for workers. One issue, and I just have a couple more. One issue that I couldn't have anticipated a year and a half ago becoming my top priority was the issue of heroin and opioids. And this has become a top priority for my administration. And we're working to make a more robust prescription drug monitoring program so that we have real-time information about who's prescribing, who's dispensing, and to whom. Fundamentally, we need a lot more education in schools, and I understand at a local level how strapped folks are when it comes to funding. That's why I'm committed to using settlement funds from the Attorney General's office to help fund needed education and outreach, particularly to young people. Finally, mention was made, Ed, of the fact that we went down to the Supreme Court just this week for arguments in the marriage equality case. As you know, Massachusetts has long been the leader. This was really ground zero in the fight for marriage equality. And so I want you to know that it gave me great honor to represent Massachusetts the other day down in D.C. The very first brief that my office filed with my name on it as Attorney General was the state amicus brief in support of marriage equality in the Supreme Court a couple months ago. So I'm proud of that. I'm proud that Massachusetts has led on that. And I'm cautiously optimistic that the Supreme Court is going to do the right thing come June. But Senator O'Connor, but here's where democratic values matter. Here's where they matter. Senator O'Connor Ives alluded to this a few minutes ago. The right for equality, for opportunity, exists now as it always existed. But the disparities persist. And the same day that I was down there standing on the steps and then inside the courtroom at the Supreme Court listening to arguments about civil rights and equal justice and opportunity and liberty and the principles of our Constitution, 35 miles up the road, Baltimore was burning. There are disparities in our society when it comes to housing and health care and jobs and employment and incarceration rates. And we need to take hold of that and embrace the opportunity to day in and day out address that. I'm going to do that as your Attorney General, and I'm going to look to lead and work with Attorney Generals across this country to address those disparities. I'm committed to that, and I'm just asking us all as Democrats, in the same way you stand up for earned sick time, in the same way you stand up for victims of domestic assault, domestic violence and sexual assault, in the same way you stand up to protect our environment, that you stand up now and speak out in support of transgender rights. Our young people are counting on us, and I know we can get this done this year. So that's just a little bit of an idea of where we've been in the last 100 days. But I promise you, I'll come back to this area often. I'm so pleased to see my mom. I don't get to see her that much given all that's going on, so she came over today. But this is an area, this is a region, and you are people that mean a great deal to me. We're your Attorney General's office. I am proud and privileged to serve as your Attorney General. And most importantly, for today, I am very proud to be a Democrat and will work hard to fight hard for democratic values and principles in the actions that we take in this state. Thank you for all that you do, and keep up the great work.
Welcome our still relatively 100-day new treasurer, Deb Goldberg.
When I ran for treasurer, I used to say a lot of people don't know what the treasurer's office does. Some of you have heard me say it, that it's cash management and debt management and unclaimed property, Mass School Building Authority, but it is also the office of economic empowerment and economic opportunity. And to prove that, on day one, I announced the Office of Economic Empowerment led by a deputy treasurer, the first of its kind in the nation. And in doing so, we elevated wage equality to the level of a deputy treasurer's office, instituting wage equality, leading on wage equality. We took financial literacy and we started a task force that will report to me in 6 months, while at the same time, I joined the National Treasurer's Task Force on Financial Literacy. And we are beginning to push out the programs that will impact every child, every senior, every single group, whether they're from the Latino community, the Cape Verdean community, the Haitian community, and we will be providing the programs that will make sure that people are never harmed or that they are empowered to make sure that they and their families are financially stable. So one of the things that we're doing right off the bat is, I don't know if any of you have seen the Credit for Life fairs. If you have, raise your hand. Not enough of you. But they are incredible, are they not? And so we are expanding in the next year the Credit for Life fair. So what are they? High school students have a simulated real-world day. So it's not just about college debt. It's not just about paying for your gas, but you literally enter the world where, oh gee, you walk by the MSPCA and maybe you adopt a kitten. But down the road, there's a veterinary bill. Or you go to the supermarket and you buy cat food. It literally begins to help kids learn early on what are the real costs of life. That's what we as Democrats are doing. I don't ask someone when they have an unequal wage, are you a Democrat or a Republican? I tell you how you can empower yourself and learn to negotiate so that you stand firm and get that wage. But the other thing we're doing is training HR directors that you don't take advantage of someone's inability to advocate for themselves. We have such an exciting HR director who's within the treasurer's office, who is working with every department, whether it is PRIM, which is the pension fund, Mass School Building Authority, down at the lottery, or up in Treasury. And we are teaching people how to not fall into old culturally embedded ways of doing things. There are lots of good people out there who don't intentionally do some of these things. I had a young man working for me on the campaign who's now working on another field campaign. And he said to me, the men who I'm interviewing tell me what they want to be paid and the women don't. But I didn't let that affect me because hanging around you, Deb, I learned that I couldn't do that. So he paid them all the same. Yes. And then we did something that was really exciting that is being followed not just in our state, but nationally. I proposed and had a unanimous vote of the pension fund that we will not support any corporate board that we own a position in unless they have 25% women and minorities. And no more of this one and done. You've seen all sorts of pension funds that say, or other investors who say, you need to have a woman or minority. I kind of scratched my head on that one. And I said, no, it has to be a percentage. It has to be meaningful. I'm going to be candid. I started at 30%, and then I found out we wouldn't be voting for anybody. So I thought maybe we should teach aspiration. So 25%. If you don't have women and minorities on your board, you don't get our vote. And why? Again, this is a good business decision. When you have everyone sitting at a table year after year who are all the same, what kind of creativity and innovation happens in that room? And are they reflecting their customers? And on top of that, are they appealing to people applying there for a job? When you look at the top of your organization and it's all one kind of person, is that really where you want to work? It makes them a more appealing place to work. That means they're accessing a full pool of talented people. And it also is a good business decision. Now, I'm going to tell you something. I never quite noticed it as directly myself, but I chair Bass School Building Authority. I chair PRIM. I chair the Mass Lottery Commission. And I will tell you, and we've seen research now that supports that my presence at the head of that table positively impacts the performance of the women in the organization. They feel supported. They strive. They grow. They share more of the information. It helps to build confidence. So I can't even begin to tell you where I have spent my last 100 days. I thought that after the campaign things might slow down a little. Trust me, they haven't. But thank God I have wonderful people to work with. Our office is a reflection of our shared democratic values, and it will continue to work on all the issues that we all care about. And at the end of the day, that is how we will win and we will prevail, because we will show that you can be a savvy, smart business person and you can be a progressive.
Thank you all for being here today. Thank you to our great speaking panel, and we'll see you all next year. Thank you.